All right, today's document is this one right here. It's a General Assembly document and it was distributed November 17th, 2023, and it relates to the proposed program budget for 2024. Another name for it is the regular budget, and this is the regular budget for the entire United Nations for the year 2024, and it relates to with regards to the agenda, it relates to agenda item 134, and we see here this is the program. Item 134 is the proposed program budget for 2024, and this is the agenda for the 78th session. And so, who is the one that's responsible for the budget? What are the different tasks that the different organs are responsible for when it comes to the budget? Well, we've got here, this is a UN Budget Documentation 2020 and beyond, a web page in the UN, and it talks about the foundational documents for the budget creation, and it starts with the charter, and then it says very clearly, preparing the budget. The charter gives responsibility for preparing the budget to the Secretary General as Chief Administrative Officer, and that's in Article 97. And then after the Secretary General prepares it, it's submitted to the General Assembly, where they have the task of approving the budget, and that's per Article 17. Going to the charter, here is Article 97, and yes, the Secretariat it shall comprise a Secretary General. Secretary General shall be the Chief Administrative Officer of the organization. And again, that's interpreted as preparing the budget falls under that category. And then article for the General Assembly, we can see here among the powers. Here it is, Article 17. The General Assembly shall consider and approve the budget of the organization. Okay, so this is related to the proposed program budget for 2024, but this document itself is just 42 pages. It's not the complete budget, but it's just an excerpt from it, so that the General Assembly and the committees can just take it piece by piece, and this is just a small piece of it. So again, the Secretary General is preparing the budget. The General Assembly is going to review and approve it. But as we know, the General Assembly, they don't really. The General Assembly itself is just the big forum where there's just debates and votes. There's no real work done at the General Assembly. Instead, that is delegated to the various committees. And here is one such committee called the Advisory Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Questions. So what's happening here is that this advisory committee is taking the budget and the explanatory notes on the budget, and it is reviewing them. And as we'll see in a minute, they add their comments to it. All right, looking at our chart, we know the 6 principal organs, and underneath one of the organs is the General Assembly. Underneath that, they have the subsidiary organs, and there's one group of subsidiary organs called the main committees. We know that's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth committees, and then they have other standing committees and ad hoc bodies. Let's go over here to the General Assembly website. We have our main committees, first, second, third, fourth, and fifth. The one that deals with the budget is the fifth committee, and that's they call it the fifth committee, but it handles administrative and budgetary matters. And then other committees that the General Assembly has here, if we look at advisory committees, we see the Advisory Committee on Administrative and Budgetary Questions, and that is the committee that is actually doing the work on this report. And then, as we'll see also later, once this advisory committee has done its work, has put forth its opinions, it then gets sent to the fifth committee, where the fifth committee would would kind of bundle it up with others, create a resolution for the review and approval of the General Assembly. All right, so let's talk about the budget itself. Here's an article from October 10, 2023 from the UN office at Geneva. The UN chief proposes a $3.3 billion budget for 2024. And here it says it includes over 10,000 posts, which was a net increase of 200. So they're adding 200, almost 200 jobs to 2024. And it says over the next several weeks, the fifth committee will discuss the proposal, including with heads of UN Secretariat Department senior program managers. The committee will then present its report with recommendations to the GM plenary for approval of the UN budget by the end of December. So that's our timeline, is we're looking by the end of December, this thing's got to get approved. And here is the proposed program budget for 2024. This one was issued May of 2023. So this was an early version. I think it's been tweaked since then. Just quickly go through a few items here. Here is, it looks like here it's broken down, and here broken down by year. They show you 2022, 2023, and then here's a 2024 estimate before and after recosting. Not sure what that is. So real quick, we go to the bottom line. Oh, by the way, these are the budget sections, the part and section. So they have, looks like they break down their cost accounting into parts and sections. Part one is overall policy making. Part two, political affairs, and then within political affairs, you've got special political missions, which is the document of the document that we're discussing. And it's actually 36 sections. Staff assessment is the last one. And here you can see the bottom line number of before recosting is 3.3, which probably is that figure which we saw from the article. And then after recosting is $3.4 billion. All right, and by the way, this is in thousands of US dollars. So here it's 3.4 million, but it's actually 3.4 billion. All right, let's get into our document. And as this says, it's under Section 3, Political Affairs, Special Political Missions. So here, the Secretary General's report, which the Advisory Committee is going to review, is just this section here about those regional offices for special political missions. And it's these three offices on which this report is based on. The first one is this United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel. And that is, take a look at this map here, right here. So here is the special political missions throughout the world the UN has. And right here is UNOWAS, which is that West African one. All right, going back, we go here. So first one here is a little bit of background. And again, this is the Secretary General's language here. And then once we get to the bold lettering right here, this is the Advisory Committee's addition to it. This is their review and conclusions and recommendations. So for this particular paragraph, it looks like they're talking about how the Security Council immediately terminated the mandate of the UN Multidimensional Integrated Stabilization Mission in Mali, MINUSMA. I just quickly looked right here, and looks like the Mali government ordered the departure of the UN peacekeepers 2 weeks ago. That was looks like maybe November, early November, October this year. I guess they're doing that because they have had more than 150 peacekeepers killed since it began operations in 2013. So Security Council said, we're done, let's get out. And then this report talks about how now they're going to transfer operations from the UNOWAS office in right here, and they're going to transfer it to I think it's actually transferring to that office from Mali. And then the recommendation here from the advisory committee, considering the existing capacity in the Department of Political Peace Building Affairs and the Department of Peace Operations, as well as the overall backstopping structure in New York, the advisory committee is of the view any additional backstopping of UNOWA should be subject to the proposal for abolishment of the existing MINUSMA backstopping post could be provided at this stage by current staffing, therefore recommends against the establishment of both posts of political affairs officers, 1P4 and 1P3. And real quick, these are the United Nations staff categories, and they base the P's on work experience. So P3 is a minimum of 5, P4 a minimum of 7 years of work experience. So it looks as though the Secretary General is recommending those positions. However, now maybe with the recent removal of the mission, the advisory committee is saying, look, you don't need it. We're against the establishment of these two positions. And then the second one is the UN verification mission in Colombia. And that's this one over here. They have a UN verification mission in Colombia. And that one I didn't know about. Apparently it is the Security Council mandated the UN verification mission in Colombia to monitor and verify the implementation of the ceasefire as outlined in the bilateral national temporary ceasefire agreement between the government of the Republic of Colombia and the Ejército de Liberación Nacional, which is known as the Second Cuba Agreement. So I guess they have some observers there, and we go to the bold, and not surprisingly, the committee is of the view that 9 regional offices could cover the 2 sub-offices, therefore recommends the establishment of 9 posts. I think it was requested a little bit more posts than that, so they're recommending a reduction. Here they're recommending against the establishment of 1 post of information systems assistant. Here we go. The advisory committee recommends against the establishment of another post, against the establishment of a position of logistics assistant, against the establishment of a property management assistant. So it seems like there's a trend here, a pattern. Pretty much the advisory committee looks and tries to cut some of these requests. Probably more information's come forward, and now they've determined their recommendation is they don't really need all of that. That's what, we can go through each one of these bold paragraphs, but that's pretty much what it's going to be there. Explore receiving vehicles from downsizing missions, don't buy new ones. Reduction of 20%, reduction of 15%. And here's their UN integrated office in Haiti. If you go to the bold, recommends against the associate information analysts. Again, let's just cut these positions. Recommends against the post of human resources. And then finally at the very end, so here's the advisory committee's action to be taken by the General Assembly, subject to its recommendations and observations above. The advisory committee recommends the approval of the Secretary General's proposal. So let's approve it, but you need to incorporate our recommendations and observations. I want to talk really quick about the assessments that the different member states get. Thought this was interesting. So this is a General Assembly resolution from January 4, 2022. So this is law in the UN. It says that it decides that the scale of assessments for the period from 2022 to 2024, and this applies to our document of the day. So it's based on following elements: estimates of gross national income. That's where it starts. And then they also talk about a minimum assessment rate of 0.001. So every member state is assessed no lower than 0.001. And then they have a special category for least developed countries, and they give a maximum for that of 0.01. And then the maximum assessment rate is 22%. So no member state can be assessed more than 22%. And the um, here is a 45-page presentation from the UN about the methodology used here, and this is quite complex. I put it in the link, so you're welcome to look at it. So it starts with the income measures the first approximation, and it's quite complicated. And then here are the scale of assessments for the member states, and it's literally each member state is assigned a percentage. So they take this, multiply it by the budget, and that's the assessment for the regular budget. Let's take a look at some of the countries. So let's just look at the Security Council members. We got China at 15%, or yeah, 15%, and France 4%, Russian Federation 1.8%, and then United Kingdom 4%, and then US 22, and there's that maximum 22. And we can look at other, here's 0.001, that's the minimum. Vanuatu 0.01, that's for the least developed countries, that's the maximum. So Uganda is one of those. Tuvalu there's the minimum assessed to Tuvalu. So gives you an idea. Now, finally, we'll take a look at the fifth committee reviewing that document of the day, and we're actually going to hear from a member of the advisory council. It is Ms. Juliana Gaspar Ruas talking about all these items from the Secretary General's report and their budget requests for the special political missions.
I now invite the Vice Chair of the ACABQ, Ms. Juliana Gaspar Ruas, to introduce the related report of that committee as contained in document A/78/7, Addendum 23. Ms. Ruas, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, distinguished delegates, I am pleased to introduce the report of the Advisory Committee on the revised estimates relating to the proposed program budget for 2024 under Section 3, Political Affairs, SPM's Thematic Cluster 3, and Section 36, Staff Assessment. With respect to the United Nations Office for West Africa and the Sahel, the Advisory Committee recommends against the establishment of 2 political affairs officer posts in its shared structure of the Department of Political and Peacebuilding Affairs and the Department of Peace Operations in New York. Regarding the United Nations Verification Mission in Colombia, the committee recommends the establishment of 31 liaison officer positions, international UNVs, instead of the 40 proposed, as well as the establishment of 9 associate liaison officer posts, national professional officers, instead of the 11 proposed. The Advisory Committee also recommends against the establishment of 1 information system assistant field service, 1 human resource assistance post field service, 1 logistics assistant position UNV, 1 property management assistant position international UNV, and 1 transport assistant post field service. On ground transportation, the committee recommends that a cost-benefit analysis be conducted between rental and purchase options and encourage the mission to explore receiving vehicles from downsizing closing missions, including MINUSMA. In relation to the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, the committee recommends against 1 Associate Information Analyst, NPO, and 1 Human Resource Assistance Field Service. Mr. Chairman, the committee recommends a number of reductions under operational cost for the 3 missions. The committee trusts that efforts will continue to be made to take into account former MINUSMA staff and also encourage headquarters and missions to explore the direct transfer of serviceable assets from downsizing closing missions. The committee recommends that the General Assembly request the Secretary General to conduct a cost-benefit analysis considering all methods of delivery of assets goods procured by the United Nations, especially with regards to direct supply from countries of origin based on data analysis. In respect of UNVs, the committee considers that an assessment should be made to ensure clarity of their roles and responsibilities, performance monitoring, and accountability mechanism. The committee also trusts that detailed information on cost recovery mechanism and any related efficiencies, including ground, air, and marine operation costs, will be included in next SPM budget submission. Finally, the committee is of the view that an overall civilian staffing capacity review based on workforce and workload analysis and take into consideration the vacancies and possibilities for reprofiling of posts and positions should be conducted. Subject to its recommendation and observations, the committee recommends the approval of the Secretary General's proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. I thank the Vice Chair.